What do you think?
Scary.
Yes, yes.
It's
Oh,
awesome.
Crip Walker's in the house. Thank you so much for that new intro. Truly
Yes.
appreciate it.
Very nice.
Yeah. God, I feel like I haven't been on here in ages.
On this one, yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, yes, I'm back on StreamYard. I don't know, something about EvuMux just didn't really work with me that well. So hopefully next year, in September, they won't hike the prices again. So it forced me to leave again.
Fingers crossed. That's all you can do.
I know.
Hi, Crip Walker. Hi, Roger. Nice to see everybody. Hi, Michael. How are you guys doing?
How are you guys doing? Oh, October is here. I love this month. Love it.
Yes, I've already started doing the spooky stuff on my channel, doing stories and all that. We're having a good time, and I'm excited about our Halloween show.
Yes.
It's going to be so fun.
Yeah, we're going to be filming in Salem.
That's just awesome.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to have my new wings attached to me and do photo shoots with Carla, and that's going to be a whole bunch of fun. Plus, we're going to take you guys through the streets of Salem as well.
It's
so
gonna be great.
Gonna be...
Just make sure you get yourself tied down when you got those wings open. They don't want the wind to come up and blow you away.
I know, definitely. Yeah.
We'll see it on the news. Woman taking off.
Yeah. Or I bat somebody on the street with my wings.
Right.
That won't be.
It's gonna be cool.
But it's gonna be fun. We have like some things lined up for everyone to watch. So we're gonna be streaming through Laura's and just go live. It's gonna be exciting.
I can't wait. Well, I can wait because then that means the month will be over. So it's just something everybody can look forward to. Hey, Pomp, how's it going?
I know. Hi, Pomp. Good to see you.
It's going to be a good time, and hopefully everything will work out well, and everybody will enjoy it, and we're all going to be in our official garb for that evening, so you guys can look forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be like the last week of October. We're going to be in Salem, so that's going to be fun. Like Salem is literally like I would say an hour from me. But growing up, I was there all the time, going through, when Lori Cabot had her shop on the pier, I would constantly go there, get my herbs, get my oils. And then, the family, the Coven store was there as well. So it's a lot of history there. So, yeah.
So it's going to be great. You're going to be able to share everything with everybody.
Yep.
So that nobody's ever been there can see what goes on, especially during spooky season. I'm sure it's going to be busy.
It's going to be packed.
Yeah,
it is. But it's going to be fun. I mean, we're staying locally. So
it's going to be great to see all of the sights and sounds. And hello, Sir Wayne. How are you?
Hey, Wayne. Good to see you.
So, looking forward to that. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. And I've cut down my time streaming as well. So I'm back to every other Saturday. I'm just taking a little break from being on weekly. So I just need some things I need to take care of. So plus I'm still recovering from my virus. So
she had the plague.
I had the worst stomach virus ever. It hit me like bricks, I tell you. So now I'm just drinking, lemonade.
Oh no, soft stuff today, lemonade.
I know. Yeah.
You know me, I'm on all the time, so gotta get it in there. Well, actually, no, I did the morning brew's doing pretty good. Everybody's enjoying that.
Yep.
And then of course the Wednesday shows, and then Saturday with you.
Yes.
And then Sundays with Carla, whenever we can manage it, because her busy's been crazy. So
yeah, it has been. So who do we have on?
Who do we have on?
Can
everybody guess who it is?
Yeah. So David has over 25 years of experience uncovering the haunted history of the Florida Key and beyond. He's an author, and his groundbreaking research has brought to light legendary figures such as Robert the Doll.
Scary.
So
Robert the Doll.
Without further ado, let's bring him on. Hello.
Hey,
love that intro.
Oh, thank you.
So everybody's popping in. Yes, wonderful. We see you've got a little friend there joining you backstage there.
Yeah, that's Robert's stunt double,
The stunt
and
double.
it's a pretty cool story. Um, Last October during Fantasy Fest, that's the big Mardi Gras in Key West,
Mm-hmm.
and Robert the Doll and I were the grand marshals of the big parade.
Oh, how fun is that?
And it was incredible. But Robert is a 120 plus year old artifact, so the museum obviously is not going to let this valuable artifact go out and ride in a casket with 80,000 people around. So what we did is we created a replica of Robert, and for the media, we went in and filmed it, and I took the doll in, and what I did is I invited the little girl spirit in Robert to join us. And we believe there are many, many, many spirits inside the doll. Some people even think there's a portal. But the one that I try to take care of is a little girl, and I call her Abby because she was the daughter of the nanny, who was Emmeline Abbott. So we went there, and I was holding the doll, and I said, "Hey, Abby, we're going to do a parade. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'd like you to join us. If you'd like to join us, just hop into this doll, and we'll take very good care of you." And I swear the second I said that, the doll got heavier. You could feel the energy in the room change. There was a guy standing there looking at Robert who didn't know anything about the story. And he was kind of looking at us like we're a little strange as I'm
Sure.
talking to the one doll and holding a stunt double. And I looked at him. I said, "Would you like to hold her?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." He took the doll, and as soon as he held her, he broke down in tears, and he was overcome with this emotion. And it was pretty magical. I was going to say unbelievable, but there's so much stuff that happens around Robert. And some things that happened after that led me to believe that, yeah, the little girl has gone inside of that doll. And I don't think she's trapped there. I don't think it's anything like that. But I think it's something where when she wants to go on little adventures, then she can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Could you do us a favor? A lot of people don't know the story behind Robert the Doll. Could you let everybody know the story and the history behind the doll?
Sure. They say Robert's the most haunted doll in the world. And, anybody can say something's the most haunted. What I like to say about Robert is with all of the haunted dolls out there, he is the one where you can actually verify his story. We know his origins. He didn't just show up in a thrift shop one day. We know he was made by the Steiff Company in Germany. He was given as a gift to a Key West boy around 1904. And this boy became obsessed with the doll. He gave it his own name. He had been Robert Eugene Otto. He gave Robert to the doll, went by Gene for the rest of his life. And whenever he got in trouble for the things kids get in trouble for, he didn't take the blame. He'd say, "I didn't do it. Robert did it." And his parents would hear two voices coming from his room. They'd go in to check, and it would only be little Eugene and Robert the doll. They say that the nanny used to get thrown into the closet, and the door held shut behind her. And when she confronted the boy, he'd say, "I didn't do it. Robert did it." And this went on and on, into adulthood. And it's a very interesting story, the relationship between the boy and the doll. And it got even stranger when the boy died, and in adulthood. He died when he was 74 years old. But the doll went missing for 20 years and then showed up at the Fort East Martello Museum in 1994.
Wow.
I arrived in Key West in 1996, and we got the doll out on display. And the stories have been insane ever since. But the great thing about Robert, these stories about him, they started going around before anybody had a monetary interest in him. Back when it wasn't cool to be associated with ghosts or haunted dolls or talking dolls. And those are the stories that really set Robert apart from all the other haunted dolls out there.
Nice.
Very interesting. Yeah. I didn't know the part that he was missing for so long.
Yeah, what happened is the auto home was sold. Gene died. He left his wife with nothing. He had written her out of the will after she gave up her life for him. And she tried renting the house out for a couple years. She had a provision that Robert must remain the sole occupant of the attic room. She didn't want the doll following her. She wanted nothing to do with it. When she eventually sold the house, I talked to the guy who bought it, and he was actually just the money guy for his friend Myrtle Reuter. And when I talked to him, I said, did Anne mention anything about Robert? And this guy, Bill Geiser, he didn't like talking about Robert. He felt that Robert had ruined the reputation of his friends because Anne was a great piano player. Gene was a great artist. But he said, oh yeah, he said, Robert was sitting in a cedar chest in Gene's bedroom on the second floor. And I jokingly said to Anne, I said, does Robert come with the house? And he told me that Anne, her face turned to anger, and she said, I hate that effing doll.
Ooh.
It was Gene's best friend. Of course, he never could make any friends of his own.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Wow.
So Myrtle Reuter took over the house. She had Robert for several years there, but then her and her husband divorced, and she took Robert with her. And nobody knew what happened to him for all those years. But he was with her at another house. And 1994 is when she said that she came into the museum frantic. She said, this is Robert the doll. He belonged to Gene Otto, and he's haunted. I never had problems with him, but the other night he pushed me into my bedroom, slammed the door, and held the door shut so I couldn't get out. I need you to take him.
Oh.
Hmm.
I wonder why.
Interesting.
Yeah, I wonder why that happened. It's seeing that she had him for so long. What happened there? Something.
I know.
I think it was something with multiple entities. So many people think that Robert is just one individual. We say, oh, Robert the doll, and people have their own ideas about what that is. And I had thought it was one entity for a long time. But when you start dealing with the multiples, and I think different changes could have brought in the other entities, maybe something that she did strengthen them. I'm friendly with her family, and they said that once she had the doll, it definitely changed her. And, at first she looked at it almost like in a motherly way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she probably did sense that child spirit, and she felt the obligation to care for it. But I think with that care, eventually the other spirits started getting stronger. And that's probably what caused the interaction that made her get rid of the doll.
Maybe they were jealous of the way she treated the one entity.
I think they all want energy. And I think if they're not getting the energy, they'll find different ways to get it.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Wow. That's fascinating. So, David, how did you become in the paranormal and until like where you are today? Like what got you started in this?
My kindergarten teacher.
Ah.
Blame it on the teacher.
And
Yes.
I was in Pennsylvania, and Mrs. Uberseter, she used to come in every day and she'd tell us about the spirits in her house. She had a Native American spirit that used to throw her cat down the stairs and knock around behind the walls. And she'd tell us the stories, and she promised on the last day she'd bring in a photograph. And she did. And it was this Native American spirit by a flower pot on the window. And when I saw that kind of started me on the path where I always believed in ghosts. And my family, well, my great-grandfather had a hotel that he haunted, and I saw his spirit there once. And then, I went into the hospitality industry, and I managed cruise ships and worked managing hotels. And I saw a ghost tour in Scotland before they really had them in the United States. And when I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, people are making a living telling ghost stories. That's what I want to do. So I quit my job, moved to Key West, and started one of the first ghost tours in the country.
Wow. It's amazing. It's amazing. Where did you live before?
I was from Pennsylvania originally,
Okay.
and then I was raised in Texas, college in Miami, and then with the cruise ships, I was living on the ocean for about 3 or 4 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was pretty cool. And and the ghosts had such a hold. And when I saw this ghost tour in Scotland, I mean,
Hmm.
it took you to the underground vaults, 6 levels down where so many people died.
Yeah.
The tour guide was amazing. He was telling one story at a church, and he threw himself against the wall and dislocated his shoulder intentionally. And I watched him doing this and said,
Wow.
"Oh my God, this is the life for me," without the dislocating the shoulder. But so and it was interesting because we're talking 1996.
Mhm.
And it was a very different environment in the United States for ghosts at the time. And, there are times when paranormal is pretty cool and a lot of people are into it. And then
Mhm.
there are times when it's not so cool and you don't want to talk about it. And a lot of the TV shows and a lot of the podcasts and the different YouTube channels have changed how that works. So it's kind of hard to imagine it. But when I went to Key West, which now is known as one of the most haunted cities in the United States,
Hmm.
nobody was talking about ghosts. I spent 2 weeks and I could not find a single ghost story. Not a one. And I was tipping bartenders. I'd go to the bar and say, "Is this the haunted bar?" And every place I went, I was met with, "No, nothing I know of." And I almost left. I was getting ready to leave Key West. And when I left, I had my car packed up. I didn't know where I was going to go. I got lost. And somebody appeared in the passenger seat of my car. And I pretty much just heard their voice. And they said, "Go back to the library." And I'd been to the library 3 or 4 times. I turned to them. I go, "I don't know where the effing library is." And there's nobody in the seat, but I saw their sleeve, and it was like a tweed type of a sleeve, and I looked up, and there was a sign that said "Library parking only." So I pulled into the parking spot, go back in the library, and I met the historian Tom Hambright. He had not been there the previous visits. And when I asked him, I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a book on ghosts of Key West." He said, "Oh, there are none." And I was almost out the library door. He said, "No books, but we've got ghosts. Hang on." And in Key West, because we have the hurricanes, they have this big walk-in vault where they store all of the archives, all of the history.
Mhm.
And he goes back in there and he came back out with a newspaper file. It was probably about 2 inches thick of all the newspaper clippings from the previous 20 years about hauntings. And I started going through there and marking them on a map and knocking on doors. And it was very fortunate because at that time, we're going pretty much pre-internet. People had lived in Key West for a long time. So I talked to people who had owned these houses for 20 years or 30 years. And they had so many stories.
Wow.
And when I got to the artist house, which is where Robert is, I was looking for the ghost of Ann Otto. I'd seen nothing about Robert. And the owner answered the door. And when I said, "Hey, I'm here to talk to you about your ghost," he said, "Oh, you mean Robert?" I said, No, Ann. And he said, "Oh, you want to hear about Robert?" And he goes into this story of the haunted doll. And I thought, this guy is insane. But then he invited me up to Robert's attic room. And as soon as he sent out that invitation, the phone that was sitting on the desk, it flew off the hook and stretched back. I look over like, what the hell? And he says, "I think Robert's ready for you." We go up into Robert's attic, and it was still furnished with Robert's furniture. The doll wasn't there, but creepy tea party setup. And I remember there was the little rocking chair and the little double bench. And there were actual teacups and stuff on the table. And it had the feel of an attic. It had been separated off from the rest of the attic. And I'm looking around, and he's telling me the story, and it was a lot to take in. But then suddenly the energy changed, and it wasn't an attic heat. There was something else there. There was something watching us. We weren't alone. And I thought I was going to throw up if I didn't leave immediately. And so I thanked him. I said, thanks. I got to go. And I asked him where to see Robert. He said he's at a museum, but they don't display him. He's kept in a back room. So you're going to have to call them up and make an appointment if they'll bring him out.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. And when I went up, it took several calls, but the curator came out and she's carrying Robert like a little baby, and she's talking to him. And I thought, oh my God, another crazy person. You know, I mean, you didn't hear much about haunted dolls at this time. So
Right.
she set him down, left me alone in the room, and he was a doll. There was nothing inside of him. He was creepy. You know, he's the size of a small child, and he's dressed like a sailor, even though he was made as a clown. And I take a few photographs, and then I thought, ooh, let me get one without his hat. And so I reached over to grab his hat, and as soon as I took it off his head, boom, the doll came alive. I was no longer alone in the room. The look in his eyes changed, and I was blown away. I paused for a minute, and then I think, oh, I've got to get a photo of this. And I take the camera, snap, nothing. 3 attempts to take the photo with no luck. I turn the camera around to look at it to see if I'm doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Fires, poof, 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 3 shots right at me. I turn around to take a photo again now that it's working. It fails again. And then I heard a giggle and the life faded. It went away from his eyes, and I was sitting alone again in a room with a completely inanimate doll.
Wow.
That was the moment where I said, oh my God, I've got to find out what's making this doll tick. And it sent me on an incredible journey it's almost 30 years now.
Wow. That's amazing.
Hi, Cree. Welcome. Welcome.
So I was going to ask you what your most compelling moment was. That must have been it.
Yeah.
That was one of them, and there have been so many. The thing that's fascinating for me with Robert, Robert has a story. It's not one story that remains unchanged. You know, the first thing was trying to find out what the true history was, because nobody knew. There were legends, and legends are so valuable because they usually stem from the truth. But as we know, as you tell them again and again and again, they become more and more sensational, and they usually end up pretty far from the truth. I was able, in that same vault, that same library vault, Anne Otto, who was the wife of the boy with the doll, she was a librarian in her final years. And she took all of the Otto family history, 6 big boxes. And these boxes were full of letters between family members from when Jean and Anne lived in France, letters with their mother and their sister. There were family histories in there. There were photos of everybody in the family. And this was an absolute gold mine. Nobody knew it was there except one historian in town. And when I was able to find this and start going through it, the different things in the letters, I'm like, there's the nanny. This nanny filed a lawsuit against them in 1934. That's the angry nanny. So we were able to figure out who that was. Mm-hmm. Then I went through census records and found out that she had lost a child about the time Robert the doll came to the house. And with that, we were able to explain who the little black girl that people had seen around the house was, and who the little black girl associated with Robert the doll's spirit is. And then there were so many other things. So over the course of the first 10 years, we really were able to solve a lot of the mysteries of Robert the doll and turn them into history. And that let us know what type of entity we thought we were dealing with, and really led to the next phase.
As far as the doll itself, do you know what its history is before it came to that family?
Yeah, so nobody knew. They said he was made by an angry servant. That was what the legend was. I was able to identify him as a Steiff doll. And the Steiff, they're a company in Germany. They're famous because they invented the teddy bear. And their signature is a button in the ear. And Robert had been played with. He wasn't one of those dolls that just was sat on a shelf. He was actively played with. So that meant that both of his ears had come off. Gene probably dragged him around the house by the
Yeah.
ears. Come on, Robert, we're going to do this. But I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the type of doll and hired experts, and nobody could do it. And then I saw one doll, I go, whoa, that's the same stitching. And from there, I looked up the Steiff company, and I recently took a trip to Germany and went to the Steiff factory where he was
Nice.
created, and I was able to find a nearly identical doll to confirm that he was created around 1904.
Oh, wow.
And it makes a lot of sense because the Otto family, they were originally from Germany. The little boy's grandfather was from Germany, and there's records of them exchanging gifts with their family. But the interesting thing for me is Robert's not the only Steiff that people associate this type of activity with. There's other Steiff dolls out there. And the thing that I've been exploring this last year, Robert's stuffed with Excelsior, which is like a tightly spun wood wool.
Mhm.
And that's sourced from the Black Forest in Germany.
Oh.
And the Black Forest is where all of Grimm's fairy tales take place.
Mhm.
Right.
My journey there actually
Interesting.
started when somebody identified one of the spirits in Robert as an earth elemental. And I didn't know a lot about elementals, but they're the spirits associated with earth, wind, water, and fire. And they were first written about by Paracelsus, who was a scientist of sorts and an alchemist. And he identified them in the Black Forest of Germany. So when all of this came together, it made me rethink everything about Robert. It's like, whoa, his true source spirit is probably an elemental from the Black Forest. And when you go back and look at the earliest writing about Robert, before anybody was involved with the doll, with making money or getting fame or anything like that from him, they called him the enchanted doll. He wasn't Robert the killer doll. He wasn't the demon doll. He was the enchanted doll. And it makes sense. He's from the enchanted forest.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Pretty interesting.
I know it is.
We had a couple of questions in there, Susan. I don't know if you've seen them.
Yes, I see right now. So let's see. Let's put it up there. The first question. Do you believe that Robert and Annabelle have demonic possession?
Yes and no. I think the paranormal is very personal. I don't think that it's like a group experience where everybody experiences the same thing. With Annabelle, there's been a lot of debate about her origins, and I see somebody commented about the Twilight Zone episode where the mother, that was the Talking Tina episode where the mother's name was Annabelle. So a lot of people suspect that the Warrens just picked up the name from that. Now, one thing that I'll say, I think objects that are haunted, I think there has to be an energy source. And a lot of times I think that energy can be infused from the people around it. So now that Annabelle's been out on tour and there's a lot of people going there with this energy and feeding that energy, I don't doubt that a spirit would come around Annabelle and hop in there. With Robert, he has so many people visiting him every day. I find that he gets stronger and stronger the more people are visiting him. As for what people experience, I've had good things happen with Robert, and I've had terrible, terrible, terrible things happen. But I think it's really just a vehicle. The way to look at it is we're all on our own walk through the forest. Mm-hmm. And I think Robert will take your hand and say, welcome to the forest. You're about to go for a ride. And I think that ride is going to be very, very personal. I know with my ride, a lot of things that were obviously geared towards me happened. Things that freaked me out dealt with earlier parts of my life. And the ultimate goal with this is to come out the other side, a stronger person, a better person. Just like in all the fairy tales, people go into the forest, they're afraid, they face their fears, and they either die in that forest or they come out the other side a new person. So if there are demons inside of Annabelle or inside of Robert, I think they're personal demons that the person needs to face on their own. And I think that doll's a conduit. And I think I believe that's the way it works.
Cree asked, what do you think would happen if the two came together, meaning Annabelle and Robert?
I've been trying to organize that for a while, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, and Annabelle was recently sold to a degree. So I think there's, and it's just recently that Annabelle started touring around. I think it would be very, very interesting to bring them together simply from a paranormal entertainment aspect. I don't think that anything would happen. I don't think that things would start exploding and people would start dropping dead right there. I think the combined energy forces could create something more powerful that would have a lingering effect afterwards. But again, when my kindergarten teacher showed me that photograph of the ghost, that's what sparked my paranormal journey. And I think all of us have those moments. And you had something happen at the
Yes.
Undertaker's where you saw the Undertaker with that. I think
Yeah.
we all have those moments that kind of bring us in, and I think they happen when they're supposed to. And I think the Robert Annabelle meeting could bring a lot more attention to the various possibilities out there in the paranormal. So it's something I'm definitely working on, and I'd love to make it happen.
That's awesome. Let's see. So Cree has another question. People ask all the time, why would any spirit want to be inside at all?
I think there could be different reasons. So what I believe right now is since I believe that there's the elemental spirit inside of him, the elemental spirits are a whole different ball game. And if they can occupy the trees, they'd occupy the wood that's inside of them. And it wouldn't necessarily be that they're trapped, but it would be that they're part of his fabric. Now, what I think happened after that is when this little girl died, and we don't know her name. We don't know how she died. We know from census records that she died. And the story that I believe happened, so Gene Otto's father was a doctor. He had the practice in the house. Emmeline Abbott was the nanny for him. When her daughter was sick, if her daughter was injured, if she was sick, if she was dying, the place she would have gone first was to the doctor she worked for. And I believe that she took her child to the house, that the child died inside that house. He had his medical office up front. And when that spirit died, the kids would have been enchanted, by that magic inside of the doll. And I think that's someplace that they would have felt comfortable, someplace that she would have gone. I think little Gene Otto, I don't think he was a crazy kid. I think he saw that enchantment. And I think a lot of us lose our enchantment. I think we're all born with it. How many of us have imaginary friends? And then the adults say, no, there's nobody there. Stop.
Right.
And so some of us cut that off, but then a lot of us get it back. Some of us don't. So I don't think it's necessarily trapped, but I think it's a friendship, a solid energy that they like. And for the spirits, that may be the energy source. Now, where it gets interesting, Cindy Kaza, she was visiting Robert the Doll when they filmed the special for, I think, Discovery Plus. And Cindy's so good. She came in blind, not knowing what she was going to be talking about. And we went around the artist house together. And she picked up on things there that nobody would know unless they had spent 1,000 hours in the library going through all the family letters. She wouldn't have known the layout of the house and the different intricacies. And she picked up on a lot. And though we knew there were multiple entities, she was the first to suggest that there was a portal inside of the doll. And that made a lot of sense as to why so many people can be so possessed by Robert or cursed by Robert at the same time. And what I believe happens, you've got that little girl inside the doll, and I think she has protectors. There are two main ones that we see around the case at the fort, and they're pretty much giant shadows. They're about 8 feet tall, and they hang around the case. if somebody disrespects Robert, if somebody flips Robert off, if there's people who go up there looking to challenge him. And what we believe happens is, there's that little girl spirit in there. And the little girl, she can't protect herself when people are being rude and people are being mean. So there's these other entities that are the enforcers, and they'll latch on to the people who are disrespectful, and they'll follow them home, and they'll take over their thoughts. They'll lock them in their rooms. They'll be the giggles coming from the basements. There'll be the car accidents. There'll be the lightning strikes, the fires, the dead deer on the yard. And what we find, people say, oh, you have to ask Robert's permission. Horrible idea, man-made legend. Okay. I don't believe that asking permission of an entity is a good idea, because you're kind of putting them above you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You want to keep even ground, but I always preach respect. Treat others as you'd like to be treated. But we find that if people are disrespectful, they do get the attachment. And the only way to get rid of it is to apologize to Robert, send a letter. And I think what they're doing is apologizing to the little girl. And that's the way that the spirits let it go.
That's very true. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I do remember seeing that you get like tons of letters coming in, right? For apologies and stuff like that.
Yeah. The museum has received, well, Robert's received about, the last count that I was told was about 10,000 letters.
Oh, wow.
And they're not all asking for forgiveness. There's a lot of people, especially children with autism, they'll go in and they'll say, oh, I love Robert. Robert's my friend. So a lot of it's fan mail and friend mail. But then you do get the people, and some of them are very difficult to read. They have one bad thing happen after another, and they attribute it to Robert. And for a lot of them, it's their last resort, sending him a letter, because it's just not stopping. And they're like, Robert, please, if I did something, God, please remove it. And those are very tough to see.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's just altogether amazing.
Yeah.
So Roger has a question. David, do you think coincidence has a large part to play in all this?
I think some of the things are definitely coincidence. All of us are going to have bad things happen, and none of us, if we can find something outside of ourselves to place blame on, that's a natural thing to do. And so, yeah, I've no doubt that a lot of the letters that come in, that Robert's not involved. You see people online, they see a photograph of Robert and they say, I'm sorry, Robert. And, they think that by looking at a photograph of him, they're going to be cursed. I don't believe that that's the case. Mm-hmm. Again, paranormal is very personal. So maybe that's someone's entry or gateway into the paranormal that they need. So I'm not here to tell you, no, that's not the case, because yes. I do think that the universe delivers things to us when we need them. But yeah, I think some things are coincidence. I've seen enough things, multiple people being struck by lightning, multiple people with, there's a lot of things that involve dead deer, to where I think they go beyond coincidence. And that's my opinion. I don't think there's 10,000 coincidences out there. I don't think every letter is a coincidence. And I've had personal encounters too. So for me, there's definitely something in Robert the Doll. But I'm not going to, what I try to do is tell his story and I want to make it really clear. I don't own Robert the Doll. I've been researching him since before he was on display. And so I've collaborated with the museum, because for them, they own Robert the Doll and he's an artifact. And the people who work at the museum don't necessarily believe in the paranormal.
Right.
They have an artifact with an interesting history, and they know they need to preserve the doll. And of course, he makes a lot of money for that museum. Nobody used to go to the museum in 1996, where he's a star attraction today. So we collaborate on that. But I operate the ghost tours up there at night, but we give people a 1-hour tour. 30 minutes around the fort because there are a lot of other spirits. And then we do 30 minutes in Robert the Doll's room where we tell the true history and then we tell the theories. We say, hey, this is what some people believe. This is what other people believe. But then we have 1 hour after that where we provide all the great equipment, all the things people have used for ghost hunting, from spirit boxes to dowsing rods and Ouija boards. And we let people do their own investigations. So it's really about people making their own decision. And I think some people go away saying, I didn't feel anything, but that was interesting. And then other people say, whoa, I didn't expect anything to happen, and that's insane.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to say was, do you think that superstition plays a big part in what's going on with the doll itself?
Superstition in what way?
As and his abilities, because people, you say, oh, something's haunted, and people who are very superstitious will take that as it's written in stone.
Yeah, and and there's different stories about Robert being created with voodoo, that the nanny put a voodoo curse on the doll or on the family, and I tend to believe that she cursed the family because she lost her daughter and she wanted them to suffer like she was suffering.
Right.
So I think there can be elements of that, and a lot of people will see that and they're like, whoa, they want to stay away. I noticed with different ghost hunting equipment, people will happily use a pendulum for dowsing. But when they see a Ouija board, they say, oh no, I'm not touching that. That's safe.
It's for the same thing.
and Ouija boards were actually, when they first came out, it was so that guys and girls could kind of touch hands and rub knees. And that was kind of the flirtatious thing. And I think it would have been around the times of The Exorcist that, they took on, that's straight to Satan. I always think it's very important when you're delving into this kind of stuff to protect yourself. I've always been terrible, terrible, terrible at that. And that's led to some of my darker times.
Wow. Okay, Cree has a question. Why don't you have 24-hour cameras around Robert to show the world these entities around the cage?
Yeah, I wish we did. So for the first many, many, many years, it's an old brick fort. And Wi-Fi signals do not travel through the brick. So they had terrible Wi-Fi because of their location of where they were in Key West, the fort's out there on the other side of the island. With the airport upgrades, better stuff came out there. But then when they put everything in, the bulk of the Wi-Fi stuff is right there in the gift shop area, which is where they have their cash registers and all of that kind of stuff. So actually getting a steady signal out in Robert's room, it's still a challenge to this day. And it's a county-owned building. It's operated by a nonprofit, the Key West Art Historical Society. And they also operate the Lighthouse and the Custom House and the Tennessee Williams. So they have a lot going on. And so for them, a Robert the Doll cam, for me, huge priority. For them, it's just not on the top of their list because they have so much going on. My hope is that one day we do get, a good, solid internet connection right in Robert's room. And I think a 24-hour cam would be amazing.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
If there was a 24-hour cam, I guarantee you'd be seeing stuff. We have enough activity happening there. If you go on YouTube and search for like Robert the Doll pushes ball, one of the things I'll do during the tour, one of the first nights I was there, the whole courtyard was flooded. And I was out just looking at it thinking, this is amazing. And then I see something come in from the gate, like outside of the dry moat, which was a wet moat at the time. And it starts coming towards me pretty fast. All right. Faster than, and there wasn't enough wind blowing to be pushing this thing like that. And it comes right up to my feet. And it was a little toy ball, a little rubber ball. And it was slightly deflated. Okay. And I took it. I'm like, that's interesting. And somebody who had been working with Robert before, she told me, she said, oh, that's Robert's way of saying, hey, let's play. So that was kind of his welcome to me. And I started putting the ball on his case when I'd tell his story because my back would be turned to the case. And so I sit up in the corner. I said, Robert, if you don't like something I'm saying, if you don't like somebody in this room, push the ball. And we've had that ball pushed 13 times. Now 13 times over what, 5-6 years maybe. So it's not like it's happening all the time. But when it happens,
Still a lot though.
you can tell. I can always tell who the jackass is that he doesn't like. And so it's been, we don't allow filming during the tour, but people can film during the VIP portion. So there's only twice that people have been filming that we captured the ball. And every time I can pretty much tell who it's going to roll towards. And one night we were there, and the person who was being the jackass, they sat kind of towards the back. And I thought, oh, I don't know how he's going to get the ball to them. And then I was almost finished telling the stories. The tour was almost over. And I thought, oh, I guess he's not going to push the ball because he won't be able to reach them. Just as I said that, the ball starts to drop. The person sitting right in front of me, they crossed their leg at that exact moment. The ball hit their toe and ricocheted back and rolled and stopped in front of the person who was being a jerk.
There's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. So there's some cool
I thought you were going to say it went flying across the room and hit the guy.
Bonked him on the head.
No, but he doesn't like drunk people. There was a drunk person there once, and he threw his little toy lion at them. Leo the lion. He threw that. So and I'll go in, and sometimes I'll look and I'll be like, I swear he moved a little bit, like, where you see it where his foot's in a slightly different position.
Yeah.
Where his hat's in a slightly different position. I had, I'd put up little cameras there when we were doing the tour sometimes. And I've had it where people are there and you see these crazy orbs that go through the case. So, it's not like it's a piece of dust that's going through the glass of his case and then coming out the other side. So hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe we'll get some cameras in 2026.
So is he always in that case, or is he removed?
He's pretty much always there. They'll remove him during hurricanes now. And the case, it's a very expensive case. It's like it's a $15,000 case, and they've got the alarm systems wired in underneath it, where they have an external alarm company they have to call to disarm it.
Oh wow!
But to take it out, that all that glass, it lifts directly up. And so you have to have like a couple of people with suction cups and all of that. And so to remove it, it's very fragile. And, there's anytime they do that, there's the risk of damage to the artifact or to the display case. So pretty much if there's a storm coming, they'll move him. They used to take the case off for film crews coming down. Like when Ozzy Osbourne was visiting Robert.
Yeah.
Right.
They took the case off for him. But that was the last time, even when Discovery Channel was down, they said,
because I would think, in all honesty, like if Robert was, the little girl wasn't Robert, I would think that she would feel awkward always being like in a case, like I wonder like if he always likes being in that case, And
I don't think the glass stops the spirits. I think they come and go, and I don't know where they go, but and that's one of the reasons why we had the effigy of Robert that I invited the little girl into for the parade. I don't think glass traps them, just like with other haunted dolls. I don't think taking, I've never found spirits to not be able to travel through a tangible object, because I think in the spirit world, I think everything breaks down to particles and waves, and we'll tune into different frequencies where, the things that we see as solid in front of us, they're, in another realm, in another frequency, they're not even solid. Things can go right through them. And I think with the spirits, I don't think glass is going to stop anything. So I don't think they see that as a hindrance. And I think they probably appreciate the constant flow of people coming through with different energies.
Let's see.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they can't eat a sandwich. They
No, that's true. I mean, if it was me, I would be like, oh God, can I have like a break from here? Like put me in a dark room or something for a while.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I felt like with the little girl. So when I'd set up for the tour, I try to nurture her. I bought a book about Bahamian history that would have been about the time that Emmeline Abbott was there. And I'd read her just a little short paragraph about family history, or teach her to count in Spanish and in German. You know, when I'd set up the chairs at night, I'd say, guess how many people are coming tonight? Oh, do you want to count it off with me? So I try to nurture the spirits, because
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't want to be in the case and have people coming up and gawking and saying the same thing and acting the same way. You want some type of nourishment and change of things. And that's part of the reason why I did the effigy as well, and invited the little girl to be like, hey, anytime you don't feel like being around that, you know, this is there.
It's amazing.
And I may just be crazy, but that's what I feel like is the right thing to do. And, you know, if I'm wrong, at least I tried.
So Cree is asking, what do you think about Sam and Colby fans accusing Robert of giving Colby cancer?
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, that's my opinion. So they came and they openly challenged Robert. And I like Sam and Colby a lot. Both times that they've been to the fort, I really like them. Of all the people who have been there, they're some of my favorite. But when I heard that Colby had the testicular cancer, it struck a chord with me, because when I first realized there were multiple entities, I couldn't figure out why, when I identified the child, why I started having problems with Robert. And I was getting attacked at my house. I'd go up to the museum to try to figure out what was going on, and I'd bring psychic friends with me. And the one time that we went up there, the psychic told me, she said, Robert says that he's going to give you cancer. And I got a stabbing pain. It was like somebody took a knife and stuck it right in my groin. And it was the same side as what happened with Colby. It was all of that stuff. And the pain was so bad that I had to go outside and lay down in the grass. And I hadn't talked about that in a long, long, long time. So when Sam and Colby came back and Colby was asking me, he goes, well, you know, what do you think about that? I said, yeah. And when I told him about that happening, I think it hit home for him. And what made things even stranger, he goes, they were both back in Robert's room. And Dan and I were in another part of the fort. Colby came out. He said, hey, there's a bat in Robert's room. And we don't get bats in there. I told him, no, you must be mistaken. He said, come look. And we go in, and up above Robert's case, perched, hanging from the lighting fixture, it was a black witch moth. And these things are huge. If you look up the black witch moth and different symbolism that comes with it, in a lot of cultures, it's associated with a curse or death. Now, Robert has a lot of control over different animals. And that's what I told Sam and Colby. I said, that's Robert sending a messenger. And I said, watch this. And I said, Robert, if that moth is you, I want you to land on whoever you're here for. And as soon as I said that, the black witch moth dropped and started circling the room and started going towards Colby. And he covered himself up. I think he was wearing a hoodie, and he's kind of moving it away. It was very real, and it was very freaky. And he wrote a very sincere letter. They've got it framed in the gift shop. But, you know, he apologized with sincerity. And I think he saw what happens when you disrespect Robert firsthand. And I think it gave him an even deeper understanding of the paranormal, and made them both think twice about how they approach it. And again, you know, it's a very personal thing. And I think that was Robert's way of taking them into the forest. And I'm very, very pleased to see that they came out the other side as stronger people.
Wow, that's amazing. Huh?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. Let me get another question here. So Cree asks, I'm sorry if you answered this already, but I didn't hear if you did. What similarities do you think Robert and Annabelle has besides being haunted, and what differences?
I think with the similarities, they both get a lot of attention. You know, Annabelle obviously gets a lot more of the attention with all the movies and all the things like that. I think the big difference between them, Robert has a longer provable background. You know, nobody knows for sure where Annabelle came from. You know, we know her story at a certain point. We know she was a Raggedy Ann doll. But finding the people who have had the encounters with her is a little tougher. You know, tracing those legends to actual people is a little more difficult. And that's one of the things with Robert the doll. We know, I mean, I was able to uncover all of this great history.
Right.
So we're very fortunate, and that might happen with Annabelle one day too. You know, I'm not saying that it won't happen, but it hasn't happened yet. So with Robert, we know his story. We know when he arrived in Key West. We know the story of the family, and we're able to piece these things together so they become more than legends. And then the sheer number of people who have had encounters with Robert, 10,000 letters. It's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, it is.
And I think more will start happening with Annabelle the more people are around her. You know, I think these spirits need energy. I think there's so much energy being put into that doll that if there's any smart ghosts out there, they're going to be like, yeah, I'll be Annabelle. Because I do think that different entities just want that energy. But with Robert and any other haunted doll out there, you know, Robert's the only one where you could verify his story from beginning to end, and where the people who created the story didn't have any reason to. They weren't making money from it. They didn't want it was actually more of a shame to them to be associated with the story. So I think,
well, like what you said with him, you traced back his lineage back to the main company that produced the doll. Yeah. Where, Annabelle, Kmart. It's just, that's how I don't see it as, the original doll for one, what they've got going on there. The original doll, if they could get their hands on that and then find the lineage on that, then maybe they've got something. But
yeah, it's all interesting. And, I haven't spent enough time like really doing a deep dive into Annabelle. Of course I've read a lot. I've heard a lot of the different stories. And I think a lot of what the Warrens have going on is pretty fascinating. But I think getting them together, that would be
that would be interesting.
That would be something else.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So you mentioned that Florida Keys is one of the most haunted places. Is there any historical background on like the land or anything like that?
Yeah, the name Key West is actually derived from the term Cayo Hueso, which is what the Spanish named it when they first arrived there. And Cayo Hueso means the island of bones. And there's different theories on how those bones arrived, but it would have been indigenous people or Native Americans. And a lot of people say the Calusa. One theory is that they were being kind of chased down the Keys from a different warring tribe, and that they made their last stand in Key West. The theory that I like the most is not a real popular one, but we know that the different tribes used to come down to the Keys at least seasonally, and it would be fishing grounds, and they'd have their settlements. I think a hurricane probably crept up on them, and they were stuck there trying to ride it out. And, when the hurricane hits in one direction, it would have washed them out to sea. And so they were probably drowned, ended up in the mangroves, all of that. Then when the winds in the other direction came back, it would have washed them up on the shore. And then the Spaniards arrive and they see bones everywhere. And they talk about, the bones up in trees, the bones all over the beach. And
wow.
That's how the name came. So there's a long history with Key West and the Florida Keys of just being covered in bones. And nobody's ever at rest for too long. The original cemeteries were washed up by storms and bodies washed across the island. They built one of the forts and dug up one of the burial grounds there. It was an African burial ground from people who were going to be sold into slavery, but came to Key West and died of disease instead. There's churches that have been built over cemeteries. So it's, they say it's paradise, but if you die there, there's a good chance they're going to dig you up and toss you around.
Yeah, jeez.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, with hauntings as well, there's the theories about limestone, about how that kind of charges spirits. And Key West used to be a coral reef, so it's coralline limestone. So that might have something to do with it. Water charges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then salt traps them. And we're surrounded by salt water.
Right. So
there
yeah,
might be a giant battery that's trapping all
the
the
giant
spirits.
whammy going on there.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of different theories, but I find the old port towns have a lot, if they've preserved their historic structures and their history. So like Charleston and St. Augustine and Savannah, when you look at the most haunted towns, they're usually port towns.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know, Wayne. So he's asking if Ozzy freaked out with Robert.
Yeah, and with Ozzy, it's very interesting because he was disrespectful towards Robert, and then I think they were having fun when they bought the little Robert doll and took it on their road trip and blamed it for everything. Ozzy tried to blow Robert up, and I think he probably thought he was having fun with that and didn't realize what he was actually getting into. There were several articles after that where Ozzy flat out came out and he said, "Hey, that doll's ruining my life." He blamed all of his health problems on Robert the doll. And it didn't happen just once or twice. There's interviews of Jack with, on the Osbournes Wanna Believe. He brings out the little Robert and passes it to his father. And his dad's like, "Get it away from me. That thing ruined my life." Jack he was on with Howie Mandel on his podcast talking about how his dad legitimately is freaked out and blames the doll. So with Ozzy dying, I mean, Ozzy's one of my heroes, so I think that's terrible. When I talked with Jack at the Michigan Paracon, I asked him, I said, "Hey, why doesn't your dad apologize?" And he said, "Yeah, he probably should," but it never happened. And and it's pretty tragic. And I'm not necessarily one to say whether it was the doll cursing Ozzy or not, but Ozzy said, "Yeah." So, and here's the other strange thing. You had Dan who was touring with Annabelle, and when he died, obviously he's been talking about how haunted the doll is, and carrying her around with oven mitts and talking about how she could kill people. Then when he died, everybody's quick to say, "Oh, how dare you blame the doll? You can't do that." I disagree with that. We don't know, but I know I tell my wife, I say, "Hey, if I die within 100 yards of Robert, drag my body in there, but say my last words where Robert did it." But I found it very interesting that there was the death associated with Annabelle, and then shortly after that, there's the death of Ozzy, which would be associated with Robert. And coincidence? Yeah, probably, but you never know.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about you. So you're also a paranormal researcher. Where are some of the places that you investigated?
So Key West was where I really got into it. And it was during the time when you pretty much taught yourself by going out there and doing stuff and seeing what happened. So I never watched a lot of the shows or anything like that. I was just kind of like tried things out. And I've never been someone who wants to prove the existence of ghosts to other people. I consider myself more of a ghost hunter than a paranormal investigator. I love history. I love finding the true stories of the spirits involved and trying to use that to communicate with them. But I love going to haunted places and trying to have an interaction, trying to have something that happens for me. And then as that continued on, I'm like, yeah, let me take other people and show them how crazy this is. So Key West was the main place. And then I did a lot of investigations in Newport, Rhode Island. And I started with a friend of mine. I started the first ghost tours there.
Okay.
And I was only up there for about a year or so. And then he took over everything and I moved on. But I've helped set up ghost tours in different places, in Texas and stuff in Florida, Newport. But pretty much anywhere I go, I just like tuning in with the energies. So if I can stay in a historic hotel, I don't usually go on ghost tours when I travel because I like experiencing things on my own. I like really tapping in and tuning in and researching things on my own. But anywhere I go, I like feeling history.
That's awesome. Now, do you like, for myself, when I investigate, like using myself as a tool. Do you use any tools that you prefer?
Yeah, and I tend to like the older ones. I like dowsing rods, and I like to
Hmm.
use a single dowsing rod, and I'll just use that, and I'll be like, hey, show me where the ghosts are. And I'll use that to kind of tap into different places, and I'll follow wherever it leads me.
Oh,
Uh,
single. That's interesting.
yeah, and then from there, sometimes I'll use the dowsing pendulums.
Hmm.
Spirit boxes, I like if you can detune them and get rid of all the static.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know what it is. I just can't separate the two.
Yeah, and there are some different boxes. We get some boxes custom built in England that we use on the tours.
Hmm.
We also do the Estes method with the the regular spirit boxes. So so I like doing that. Sometimes I'll do some EVPs, but for the most part, I like finding a really dark spot that feels super creepy and going in there and sitting down and then just trying to tune in, if I can free my mind from all the other stuff going on and really try to tap in. But
Hmm.
but that can get freaky too. And I go through phases where I'll be very much into the paranormal and very much seeking it out, but then it
Yep.
can get too heavy because I suck at protecting myself. I don't cleanse afterwards.
Yeah.
And I'm better at that now, but um, it's just not my strong suit. And I continuously get attachments, and then people who know more than me and are better than me can pick up on them, and they've helped me many, many times, and I've been very fortunate for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. You definitely need to protect yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So now,
Definitely.
I try to start every day. I try to spend 30 minutes, stretching and meditating and talking
Hmm.
to spirit guides and, and asking them to make sure that all of these other spirits who I don't need stay away.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's hard now because there's so much, I don't know, like the world I feel like is like transforming, and there's a lot of like negativity, in the air and stuff. So it's very hard for everyday life to actually, protect yourself from that,
Yeah. And
you
I think
know?
when we latch into the paranormal, I think these other spirits, they see us as an energy source. And when they start utilizing our energy, if we don't have control over that, I think that can
Hmm.
lead to a lot of the symptoms that people experience, when people suffer from depression or, self-harm and things like that. I think all of these can be a byproduct of getting involved in the paranormal, because when you have an attachment, you don't know it at first. Uh,
Yeah,
it's something that's going to creep in, and a lot of times you won't know it, and it can drain you for years and years and years.
Yeah.
It can it
yeah,
can be
definitely.
it can be dangerous.
Definitely. Robert is asking, Roger, sorry, not Robert. What do you think of people that think their mobile phones can contact the dead?
Maybe they can. Maybe they can. I'm I'm not here to debunk anybody's paranormal experience because I think it is so personal.
Hmm.
And who if their grandparent wants to make contact with them, maybe the easiest way is through their phone. Obviously we know that there are apps out there that preload words and that use other things, and there's that element of entertainment. But I don't, science hasn't caught up with the human experience, and I go back again to that picture that the kindergarten teacher showed me. Nowadays somebody might say, "Oh, look at this photo I got. Check out the cool orb." And there might be somebody standing there saying, "That's not an orb. That's pollen. You're an idiot." And I just think, what if the teacher had held up that picture of the ghost in front of the flower pot and somebody said, "That's a light reflection from behind. Oh, that's an exposure."
Hmm.
What if they had said that? What would I be doing right now? Who knows? Who
Right.
knows? But I can't imagine my life without the paranormal. So for me, I'll try different things, and I like to go with what works for me. And
Hmm.
I mean, I don't think it's my place. I don't think it's anybody's place to tell anybody else what their paranormal experience should be and what's real and what's not. Because when it boils down to it, none of us know. We're all
Yeah,
just exploring. And I think people should be allowed the freedom to have their own personal exploration.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what inspired you to write?
The ghosts, I started the ghost tour, and people were asking me, is there a book on the ghosts of Key West? And there wasn't. And I knew more of the stories and more of the history than anybody. And, I went to a couple publishers and nobody was interested. So I said, well, I'll do it myself. And this is before it was so easy with Amazon. So I found publishers, I figured out how to do it and put out the first book, and it did really well. And so from there, I continued on and started writing about other things in Key West that interested me. And so now I've done key lime pie cookbooks and the history of key lime pie, and several ghost books, and Robert the Doll, and then books about pretty much every aspect of Key West.
Mm-hmm.
And I like writing. There's different ways people express themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
for me, I've never done a podcast, or I like joining people on their podcasts and things like that. But my way of communication, I've always done best by putting things down in writing, and it gives me more time to think about it, to put it out there. So
Yeah, it's amazing. Cree has a question. Have you ever caught anyone trying to do any kinds of rituals around Robert?
yeah, sure, yeah.
Oh boy.
And
Wow.
people do them. There's people who come in and they say that they've cleansed the spirits around Robert, that they've gotten rid of him. There have been religious people who come in and do things. There's other people who come in and do bloodlettings and things like that. So yeah, all of that happens. And when people visit the museum during the day, they don't get the Robert the Doll experience with the guided tour and with all of the history, but they can come in and actually see the doll, which is very cool. And so some people find themselves alone in there and they do these things. But I don't think it changes anything. I think the spirits in there are pretty strong. And again, it's part of the personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as long as they're not smashing Robert's case or covering him with blood or sacrificing a chicken in there, then.
Oh my God, can
Yeah.
you imagine? Holy moly.
Yeah.
I don't think you get away with it. They do it.
I tell you, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Good question.
Do you find that you're connected somehow to Robert?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, I'll see if I can't keep this story somewhat short, but when I found out about Robert and the connections with the elemental spirits, leading up to that, I had noticed a lot of parallels where everybody involved with Robert had a connection to Pennsylvania and Germany and Key West. And, that goes for the Otto family. And then that went for the Reuter family, Robert's second caretakers. And then, I'm pretty much Robert's third caretaker after Myrtle Reuter, as far as taking care of the entities or spirits within Robert. And same thing, you go back in my family and Pennsylvania German, and with all three of us, military ended up sending people to Key West. After I'd been doing the tours at the fort for a few years, I found out that the first David Sloan, that his Civil War regiment, Pennsylvania 47th Volunteers, they helped build the fort that Robert the Doll's in. So there's too many connections for me to think that I'm responsible. I was definitely led to the doll. And so I traced back all of these Pennsylvania German connections to the very first one. And it's my kindergarten teacher who told me about the ghost. So I tracked her down about a year ago and I called her up, and she was probably a little freaked out, but like, hey, there's this haunted doll and I think you have a role in it. But I asked her why she started telling us about ghosts. And she told me her and her husband, and she was, she was probably still a teenager when she was teaching. She might have been 20 years old, but she said that they were renting a house, and that she woke up one night and the squirrels were going crazy behind the walls. And she looked around, she noticed on the wall there was this bright ring of light with a line coming down from it. So about the size of a soccer ball, but like a popsicle or a lollipop, with the stick coming down. And there were no lights outside, no street lights. So she got up and put her hand in front of it to see if light was coming from maybe a car headlight, and there wasn't, but this symbol remained. And it was so bright, and the way that it was glowing, she thought it was fire behind the walls. And she said, oh God. So she put her hand against the wall. It was cool to the touch. She woke her husband. He looked at it and he said, I see that, but I want nothing to do with it. And he goes back to bed, and she said it stayed there for a minute and then it disappeared. And then after the squirrels got quiet, if they were squirrels, and she said that paranormal activity started the next day, and that's when she started telling us about it. And I looked up this symbol, and the first thing that came up in my search was the Irminsul, which was the tree that the pagans worshipped in Germany back, with tribal Germany. And the Irminsul was cut down by Charlemagne to stop pretty much force Christianity on them. This ushered in the Holy Roman Empire. The first ruler of the Holy Roman Empire was Otto the Great. And in Jean Otto's family history, there is a family history that says that they are direct descendants of Otto the Great. So this kind of sent me on that trip to Germany, where I was exploring the tree magic and exploring the forest magic, because there's a long history of trees being cut down and churches built out of them, to force the pagans into Christianity. So it became a very interesting theme, and that all led, to the Black Forest.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no doubt that this journey was predestined from the time I was in kindergarten, probably before that.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were in Germany, we did a paranormal weekend with Robert. And when I found out about this elemental, and there's something called kobolds, which people can look up, Kobold,
Mm-hmm.
and they're these mine spirits or hearth spirits, and they're playful until you cross them, and then you're screwed. I mean, they're just like Robert. So we did a seance with Robert, and I created a root doll. It's called an Alruan, which is a German root doll that I believe plays a role in Robert's history. I invited this spirit into the root doll, and I returned it to Germany, and I released it into the Black Forest. When I did that, it was at midnight. I went pretty deep into the Black Forest by myself, and I had headlamps to see, because it is a Black Forest because it's so dense.
I'm there.
And you absolutely love it.
I would love to.
The energy is incredible. I don't know if I released a spirit or not. I went through the motions, and it was an experiment of sorts, but also, if this spirit was trapped, I wanted to give it a chance to go back to where it was from. And then, but the thing I noticed when I started walking back out, I was walking for about 10 minutes, and I realized I did not have my flashlight on or my headlamp on, and I was able to see. I could see the entire walk out, and it was pitch dark.
Yeah.
I got to, when I realized it, I started opening my eyes and closing my eyes, and I couldn't tell which was which. And I wouldn't have died if I had fallen off the path, but it would have been an unpleasant roll down the hill. And then I overshot the path that cut back down to my Airbnb. And I walked down, I saw this beautiful field. It looked like wheat. And the moon, it was a gibbous moon that was on its way towards becoming full. And the field was almost glowing blue. And so I laid down in it, and I looked up at the moon, and I was thinking how beautiful it was. And this streak appeared across the sky, and it connected to the moon, and it made that same symbol that my kindergarten teacher had seen.
Wow.
And the streak, it was caused by an airplane. But for it to happen at that moment, to me, it was like a sign from the universe saying, you're on the right path.
Wow.
And a few days later, we went to the town in Germany where my 6th great grandfather was from. He was a clockmaker outside of the Black Forest. And we went to an old antique shop there, and I said, I want to get a clock. The clock that I purchased, I went to look for a maker's mark on it. Mm-hmm. And in the grass underneath, there's the symbol, the circle with the line coming down from it.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And I thought, when those things happened, I thought it would be like, whoa, I thought there was going to be some grand finale
Yeah.
journey that I was on, and it didn't happen, which was a little bit disappointing. And I kept waiting for that to happen. I think it was in May that we were in Germany. So I was waiting for that to happen, but I realized it's not like in the movies where there's this grand finale. It's just that, we're constantly opening the next door and moving on to different things. And I think in a lot of ways that gave me great closure in the whole everything with Robert the doll, because he took me on this incredible journey, and it made me realize that, wow, I mean, I'm 55 now. And when I look back and think the universe has been taking care of me for 50 years and had a plan in place the entire time, that was more incredible and more magnificent than anything I could imagine. It makes you feel very much at one with everything happening around you.
That's amazing.
And I completely attribute that to my journey with Robert the doll.
Wow, that's amazing.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Cree has another question. What do you think about what happened to Kalani and Josh when they went there and put blood on the replica of Robert, then put it on Robert's cage, then the attack?
Yeah.
Did that happen?
Yeah. So I wasn't there when Kalani and Josh were there. I like Kalani a lot. And Josh is supposed to be really cool too. But Dan Radomski is, he pretty much runs everything with the paranormal at the fort. And he was there that night, and he told me, he said, oh, they weren't good. He said they came out and they weren't faking anything. They had to leave for a while, and they didn't even want to come back. They had rented the fort for just themselves for the entire evening. And they were so shaken up that they almost didn't come back. So again, it's like, and with anything like that, there's the paranormal entertainment aspect. You've got to realize that if they're doing a show and nothing's happening, nobody's going to watch.
Right.
So there's a certain pressure to make things happen. But I think when people tune themselves into this kind of stuff, things can get real. And a lot of times what I see at the fort, a lot of times when people are looking for that paranormal entertainment, they get more than
they bargain for.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Kalani and Josh, both really cool. There's a haunted firehouse in Key West, and we do investigations there twice a week. They rented that out. They had more activity at the firehouse than they did at the fort. I tell you, Robert, that was cool, but this firehouse is something else. So their video is out there somewhere. So definitely worth checking out.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, definitely. Dragon's asking, do you think any of the spirits connected to Robert has been formed by the beliefs of the people in the stories?
Yes. Yeah. I think that the spirits are always changing. I think they're very adaptable. And I think that the stories going on around them directly influence them. And I think we'll get to a point when quantum science will probably explain things better. I don't think we understand what's happening with a lot of the matter around us, but I do think that we shape it. Again, I think it goes back to the waves and the particles. So I think nothing is immune from what's happening around it. I think we're all shaped by our surroundings. So yeah, without doubt, I think every person that visits there has an impact on the energy.
Oh.
Great questions.
Yeah, God, they have tons of them. I'm trying to catch up here.
I really like your people.
I'm trying to catch up here because I'm so fascinated by you talking, and then I'm like, wait a minute, the questions. So Cree is asking, do you think any of these spirits around Robert could be egregore in nature from all the people that go to see Robert? If so, do you think that could be dangerous to the community?
I don't think Robert's a danger to the community. I think, so what I find is that people who have encounters with Robert, you have to be there. You have to be with Robert. So I don't think there's necessarily a risk to the community. I know when Annabelle was touring around, they said, the prison escape was blamed on her and the fire. And I think those are situational things where they're not necessarily related. But yeah, I mean, I'm always concerned with the energy that's brought to the fort. Robert used to be the enchanted doll. Now, when he's marketed as the demon doll, it brings more of that energy. And it can affect things around there. Yeah, I do think it's a concern. And that's why when we do the Robert the Doll experience at night, that's why we try to tell people, hey, there's multiple entities. There's a little girl in here. Robert is not out to kill you. Just like anybody, Robert wants respect.
Right, because that's the impression you get when you like the larger YouTubers go out there, and I think that's the vibe they're giving off, that it's evil, and so they put that thought in everybody's head.
Yeah, and that's what sells. I mean, the people with YouTube channels, everybody wants to make a living doing what they love, right? And people know what algorithms work. I mean, social media in general steers us towards the things that create conflict.
Yeah.
And it's no secret that demons sell and dark sells.
Yes, it does.
And that's fine. That's fine, because maybe that is delivering what people need to experience. Maybe there's some greater balance in the earth where more people need to experience that dark to get to the light. I don't really know. I mean, it is what it is. So I think the best thing is to focus on ourselves. If we focus on ourselves and focus on our community, and if we do our best, then the paranormal will take us on a very, very interesting ride.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Kip, for coming in and joining us.
Thank you.
Have a great night. All right, we have another question here by Sage. Do you think that Robert's spirit is a non-Christian soul then?
That's what I suspect. Yeah, I think it predates Christianity. At least the core spirit does. But some of the other residual spirits in there. I know Gene Otto attended church at St. Paul's Episcopal, and I think the family was Protestants before that. So there's probably a lot of it. A lot of stuff going on there. I don't really look at Robert as having any specific religion. Something interesting that happens in the fort, and this is a completely different part of the fort, but we've had over 100 people burned with their crosses. If they're wearing maybe a cross necklace, or even like a tattoo of a cross or of Christ, anything religious, they'll have it heat up, or sometimes like burn to the point where it leaves a mark. There's an episode of Paranormal Caught on Camera that shows some of this, I think. And for a long time, people thought, oh, that's Robert's, demonic and causing these burns. But I noticed that they were happening near a Calusa idol. And the Calusa are the tribe that we think were the ones massacred there. So there's something called a Key Marco cat. And it was found in a burial mound of the Calusa, and they think it was one of their gods. So I had a replica made as a trigger object to try to attract the native spirits, because everybody's going around Key West, and it's like, well, how come nobody's getting any of the Native American spirits? So we had this, and we carried it around the streets of Old Town for years, and then we started getting a lot of good attachments with it. And so I put it in, we have a haunted hallway where I've got about 30 different objects that are strange and unusual or have this energy. And so I put them up as like a little hidden museum that people can investigate after the tour. And all of the burning happened when people were very close to this Calusa idol. And these Calusa, they hated the Christians because Christians used to kill them. So they used to sacrifice a Christian every year. So I think there's some anti-Christianity going on in regions of the fort, but all with good cause.
That's amazing.
I don't know that it's happening with Robert. I don't know. I don't know if there's that pagan residual energy that resents the forced Christianity. I'm not sure where all that comes in.
All right, let's see. Got questions here. Do you find a certain time of the year that Robert is more active than others?
That's hard to say because I don't know if it's more times of the year, but when there's storms, whenever there's storms, the whole fort becomes more active. And there's so many spirits out there. We say 42, but there's a lot more than that probably.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it is about the fort that charges this energy. I don't know if it's because it's built on the Native American burial ground, or because it was used as a hospital during the Civil War, or because there's so many objects in there with these attachments or that have had deaths involved with them. But storms definitely charge the fort, and we'll notice an increase in activity. And then, times of year when there's more people around. So summer's usually busiest for people visiting Robert because we'll get the families down there. In September, when there's hardly anybody there, you can feel the energy weaken. And I think that is because of the exchange. We eat food and take vitamins, and we have energy, and then it's to us to share it with those entities. So I think less people there, less activity.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Another good question.
So what do you feel happens after you pass?
I don't really know. I think part of us sticks around. At least I'd like to think that, because I think it would be cool to be aware of what had happened. I think some spirits are trapped based on my personal encounters with spirits. I think some of them are trapped, but I think energy kind of dissipates back to what it was. We know that the energy is always there and can take on different forms. But I do think it's all one big connected mass. So I think maybe elements, like, I don't know how many particles I'll break down into, but I think maybe some that will have a memory of things that have happened before.
I mean, some people think that you're reborn. Some people think that you're part of like the great plane of energy. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all one big living, breathing organism. I think the particles move towards different places. And I do think quantum science will probably explain a lot more of it, because when you look at science today, it's very young. It's in kindergarten in relation to the human experience. And it's catching up rapidly. And I think, but still, even science from 10 or 20 years ago, it's been proven wrong. It's like, oh, we thought this, but that's all wrong. So that's always updating and changing. And I suspect that quantum science will prove that, time isn't linear and that everything's happening all at once. And it'll probably be able to explain religion and ghosts and things we haven't even thought about. It's all going to be really mind blowing. And I wish, and I wish I knew, but the fact is, I don't have a clue. None of us have a clue. We're just going based on what we know.
Yeah, definitely. Pinky asked, do you think that the spirits attached to Robert affect people more when they mock him because they get angry at him?
I think when people mock Robert, they're mocking the little girl. And I think the spirits around Robert, they're protectors. I think they're protecting the little girl. Maybe they're protecting the elemental magic. Maybe there's that greater force in that elemental magic. But I think when you go in there and you're mocking, that's when you get the lesson. And I think it is to protect the core spirits. And it's just a lesson on being nice to people.
Yeah, I agree as well. So what, do you have any special events coming up?
I've got some fun stuff. Pretty much it's Halloween every night for us in the US.
Yes.
And we do the tours every night. Firehouse, we do the investigations twice a week.
The famous Firehouse.
Yeah, but so it's, when you come to Key West, you've got to see the southernmost point. You got to go to the Hemingway House, and you have to see Robert the Doll. And you can see him at the Museum of the Day. But if you want the full experience, do it at night. Get the investigation. Do the VIP to get the investigation. Something fun that I've got right now there's a new book called The Christmas Curse of Robert the Doll.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's almost like a night before Christmas because we don't have the elf on a shelf in Key West. I mean, it exists, but in Key West, everybody has the Robert Did It dolls. And they're the mini plushes like Ozzy Osbourne had.
That's
And
cute.
now they even have special Christmas ones.
I want a mini plush.
And people will take them and, from Halloween right up until Christmas, they'll have them around their house, causing mischief and putting together little scenes and showing what the dolls are doing. So I did a book called The Christmas Curse of Robert the Doll, and that's kind of become a Christmas tradition here. I had written the story several years ago, and now we just put it out as a book. So that's brand spanking new. We're doing the Hidden Museum of Haunted Objects, which the objects have been there for 5 years, but now we've really kind of turned it into an experience where we have audio recordings telling the backstories of each object, and people can go in and do their own investigations and see which objects speak to them. We're launching a UFO Star Watch, or relaunching that, because there's a really cool history of flying saucers and the stories about an underwater base in Key West. And we started investigating it and uncovered a really rich history. So we take people out and tell them that story. And it's on one of the piers right out in the ocean. And we have like a $4,000 night vision scope, military grade.
Nice.
We look at the stars with, and you see beyond the stars, and there's some strange stuff moving around. So that's brand new. So there's a lot of cool stuff. Key West is very unusual, and that's what we try to stick to the unusual stuff, beyond getting out of the water on the reef. So
it's amazing.
Yeah, if anybody's coming down, set up a free haunted directory at hauntedkeywest.com, and that pretty much just tells all the haunted restaurants, bars, all that stuff. Just a free directory for anything haunted that you want.
That's awesome. Sage is asking, so do you think that the spirit that inhabits Robert, oh, I got lost the question, was related by people, or one that came into the to inhibit him?
I think multiple spirits, and what I believe right now is that the first spirit was the elemental spirit from the Black Forest of Germany, and so I think that's infused in his wood. And then I think that there's the little girl spirit, the daughter of the angry nanny, Emmeline Abbott. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I think that there's that portal with all the other spirits. And it's interesting. We were talking about the tree of death right before we went on. Someone told me the names of two of the dark spirits, like the big shadows that surround Robert. And it was after a tour, and they said, I know who the spirits are. And I said, oh, tell me. He said, I'm not allowed to speak their name, but I'll write it down. And he wrote them down, and they were phonetic, but it was like Moloch and Ots. Mm-hmm. And I didn't find much looking them up, but then I found Moloch is one of the entities that's associated with the tree of death. And I just uncovered that about a year ago. But then Ots, I could never figure out. But then I guess it's in Yiddish. Ots means tree. So Ots means like tree or opposite of tree. Mm-hmm. So that would mean the tree of death. So there's some interesting stuff that's presenting itself with that.
I really need to look into that.
Interesting avenues to explore.
They do. Ooh, guys, thank you for all the questions. Wow. Trying to catch up here. Okay, so Kriya's asking, you said that you feel some entities are trapped. How so? Annabelle has a special box with salt and holy water and prayer. What does Robert have?
Robert doesn't have any of that. I don't know how powerful the holy water or the salt or all those things are. I think that entities get away with whatever we allow them to within ourselves. And that's not to say we have full control over that all the time. I think more that I'm trying to think when I said that the spirits are trapped in the doll, I might have misspoken with that. I don't know exactly what context I said that in, because I feel like the spirits can come and go. And with that portal that's in him, I don't feel like each of them is always there. And with the little girl spirit, I invited her out into that replica. I think that the original spirit is infused in the wood, but with the elemental spirit, my understanding of them is that they're much greater than the single force. So, all of the wood that's out there could be infused with this great elemental spirit that's very powerful.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's kind of the best I can do on that.
Okay. Pinky's asking, do you believe that spirits have emotions and feelings like we do?
It's a great question. And I'd say I think they're aware of emotions, because I think that our emotions give them energy. And I find like anger and fear seem to charge them up even more. But laughter can do the same. So I think any harsh energies or emotions of our own can charge them. So yeah, I think they're aware of them. I've seen spirits being playful too. So I'd like to think that they can, but it's very easy for us to assume that all spirits are like humans, and we think some of them were. So it's very easy for us to put human emotions into them. But
yeah,
that's something. It's a really good question that I've never spent a lot of time thinking about, but I'm going to think about that. I like that a lot. It's very fascinating.
I do believe that spirits have emotions, because I investigated a couple of years ago, not too far from me, the Whitney Moore house. And there was a little boy named George there, and he passed away of an illness. And it was like he was kind of like playing with us in a way. Like he loved playing with the balls that we put down, kind of like a hide and seek thing. So they could be, childless, and they could be, interactive and playful, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen them react to anger before too. So, and it seems like they react with a little bit of that.
Okay. Kriya's asking, how do you think the portal was formed? I don't remember if you said that.
Well, Cindy Kaza, or Kaza, I'm sorry, I don't know what the proper pronunciation of her name, but Cindy, she was the first one to talk about a portal, and it made a lot of sense, because that explains why so many people can be cursed by Robert at the same time. Now, I started thinking, okay, where would this portal come from? My best theory, I had heard a story from someone who knew Gene Otto, and he said that he used to, when he was an adult, he used to scare them as kids and say that the house was built on top of a graveyard. Now, I always thought that was interesting. What makes it more interesting, Eaton Street, where the house is, it's at 534 Eaton Street. Right across the street from that is the Old Stone Methodist Church. The current church is built on top of their old cemetery. As they expanded, they needed bigger churches. Everybody was buried filling up their property, so they built right over it. There's cool pictures of one of the preachers when they were redoing the floor, and he's got his head underneath the church, and there's all these tombstones. Couple of properties down, right on Duval and Eaton Street, is St. Paul's Church, and it's the fourth church built on the property. They were destroyed by fires and by hurricanes. They built that church on top of their cemetery, and some of the bodies were moved. But John Fleming, one of the town's founders, is buried underneath the altar, and a few others still underneath, and then some right up against the side. So there's this precedent for building on top of things. And right in between those two churches, you have the Otto home and you have the Eaton Street Theater. The Eaton Street Theater is the old Baptist church, and it's one of the property held one of the first churches on the island, and it burned down couple of times. I think that they probably had a cemetery that extended to where the artist house was built, or the Otto home was built. And me and the manager went underneath the house about a year ago, looking for any signs of an old cemetery. And we found some interesting bones. I don't know if they're human, it could have been something that a dog brought underneath, but we found one that looked like part of a hip, and one that looked like part of a spine, like a vertebrae. But the cool thing that we found underneath there, I found a carved piece of stone that looked like it would have been chipped off of a gravestone. So if there was this cemetery, and if there are these bodies underneath the house, and if the nanny did do some type of a ceremony, it probably would have been Santeria or Obeah. She was Bahamian, and Santeria was very prominent in Key West. Then maybe it did something with the spirits underneath.
They could have.
So that's my theory.
Yeah, because not necessarily the bodies were removed, right?
Right.
Back in the day when they built.
Yeah.
Huh.
Bye, Ace. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, Ace.
Bye, Ace.
I don't know if you noticed that comment that Roger made. He said that his smoke alarms just went off. He checked. He couldn't see any smoke. Can't smell any smoke. What set them off? Sorry, Robert.
Wow.
Freaky.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious if anybody else is having any Robert encounters. We've had some cool things. A lot of times Robert will mess with technical things.
Yeah.
I've had him loop his voice in where he captured when it said Robert, and it just kept going Robert, 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 Robert.
Wow, that's interesting. Oh, God, it's just so fascinating. It really is. From like the history to like now,
Right.
it's
And
just
it
so
is.
fascinating.
It's just a big mystery because there's no way to prove or disprove.
Yes.
Yeah, and the thing I love about Robert, you'd think after 30 years, I kind of went into this expecting, hey, there's going to be one story.
Mm-hmm.
But the story has continued to evolve, and the fact that this new element this new elemental would be introduced after almost 30 years and change my entire perception of what's going on with the doll. It's pretty mind blowing to me, and that's what I love about the paranormal is, it is always evolving, and it is the personal experience.
Yeah, and we have to love what we do. Yeah, paranormal. Always trying to seek answers, Yeah.
Well, see, that's the other thing. It makes you keep coming back because you might go through a dry spell and have nothing, and then there's just that one little thing that might happen at one moment, and it just sucks you right back in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't think we're ever going to know the answers. I think it's not something that there's one answer to. I think it is a journey.
Oh, and like you said, just everybody's own personal experiences, because nobody ever has the same experience, even if you're in the same place. One person will have one experience, and somebody could be in another room and have a totally different experience. So it's different for everybody.
We were in front of the theater that I talked about, the one next to the auto home, and this place had been closed down for probably 10 years, nobody inside. We were standing in front of it one night, and somebody said, "Oh my God, look at that." And so everybody starts looking through the windows, and there was this pretty much like a large ball of cotton towards the back.
Mm-hmm.
And it started rolling towards us down this aisle. And it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And when it got up to the windows, it took on the form of a little girl. And I could see her clear as day.
Wow.
And a lot of the people could see her clear as day. But I noticed that some people in the group were saying, "Where? What? What?" And the people who saw this were so blown away that anybody asking, they're like, "Shut up, shut up, shut up." And she was there for a moment, and she looked right through us and then turned around and turned back into that ball of cotton and rolled away. And afterwards, I spoke to the different people, and we probably had 25 or 30 people there. And I asked the ones who saw it what they saw, and they all described the same thing. And I asked the ones who hadn't seen it what they saw, and they're like, "There's nothing there." And it made me question. It's like, okay, well, how does half the group see one thing and none of them are lying? And then half the group sees nothing, and none of them are liars. And it made me realize that we're all tuned in slightly differently. And, we can share a car, and I can tune into heavy metal. You can tune into rock and roll. You can tune into country music. And if you try to tell me, oh, there's country music coming through here, I'll be like, no, it's all heavy metal, because that's all I'm tuned into. But there are hundreds of songs playing around us at any given moment, and we only tune in to one of them at a time. And I think the paranormal is the same way, and I think that's why some people experience something when somebody else be like, no, there's nothing there.
Yep.
Right.
So, and I think unfortunately the paranormal tuning, when you see people in an insane asylum talking to someone else, I think they're dialed right in that same similar frequency. And same thing when people are drunk or on drugs and interacting with spirits. I think that's suddenly shifted their tuning, where they're picking up stations that they weren't ready to. So right. I think that can all be pretty close.
Oh, that's amazing. Laura, do you have any other questions?
No, I don't. My Cree does.
Let's see. Let's go up there with Cree. Cree, where are you? Okay. Here we go. Robert being said to cause illness falls into my belief system where disrespecting spirits being a receptory causes illness and suffering. Why do you think that is? I may have pronounced that wrong.
I think maybe, with the spirit attachments, I think they can cause the illness because the spirits are draining from us. So I think if we've opened ourselves up to that and we have something that latches on that we're not quite aware of, I think that energy drain can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think also mental distractions, if we're focused, even if we don't know that it's the spirit, when we feel that something isn't right within our head, it can take our focus away from that good energy that's around us.
Yep.
So I think keeping our energy in tune is very important. I think spirits can help us stray from that. And it's not like in the movies where it's like, boom, oh, I'm possessed.
Right.
It's this gradual thing. And at first, you might be a little grouchy. You might not like the tastes of foods that you've liked before that. And, then the irritability, and that grows, and then you might be sleepless, and it can manifest in different ways. So it's all a very gradual thing. And, we can write it off as depression or being tired. And there's other causes for those things too. But, it's not like in the movies. And so I think the illness can come right along with that. I went through a really terrible, at least year and a half, where I was having all types of problems with my brain. And I mean, memory issues, and then more severe. I won't go into all of it, but we came up to Pittsburgh so I could see good neurologists, and they weren't able to figure things out. And then in July, when I was in Key West, I ran into there were some people with Santeria who had helped me when I was writing the book with Robert and first started getting attacked, and had some really bad experiences. They saved my life. They changed the trajectory of things. Mm-hmm. I hadn't seen them since then. And through a strange series of circumstances that are not a coincidence, I ran into them again, and they identified an attachment. And they said, we need to get rid of this. And they called down their spirits. And when they called down their spirits, their faces changed, their voices changed. And the first thing that their spirit did was put his hand on my head, and it said, you're having problems with your brain, and the doctors can't figure it out. They're not going to figure it out because there's nothing wrong with your brain. It's the spirits. And they said, when you get up early in the morning and you're reading your books about the spirits, and I'd been reading about all the alchemy and the ancient magics, and with the different symbols and a lot of stuff. They said, I'm opening doors. They said, you're opening doors and you're not closing them, and you have hundreds of doors open. You're not allowed to do that. You can only open one door at a time. And so they did a cleansing. They closed the doors. They told me some things to do to cleanse my house. the next day when I woke up, my brain felt back to normal for the first time in a long time. And so that's just one example of how, sickness or illness, and people can say whatever they want about it. I spent tens of thousands of dollars going to the best doctors and neurologists who were not able to help me. And these two people who practiced Santeria and who were in touch with the spirits, in 30 minutes, they gave me my life back.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow. Cree's asking, how many times have skeptics gone in non-believers and came out believing?
It happens a lot. I don't have an exact number.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of cool because we'll get different family units who come, sometimes it's a believer who really wants to see Robert. And so their family comes along with them saying, oh, okay, yeah, that'll be fun. I find a lot of times the people who most want an encounter, they don't have anything happen. And, it's almost like when we're looking for a partner or something and you want it so bad that it doesn't happen until you stop.
Right.
And so we'll have people who are skeptics who walk out saying, well, I'll be damned. I really thought this was a bunch of BS and I'm pleasantly surprised. So it's cool when that happens.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we try to do is create an environment where it's like nobody's forced to believe anything. We encourage, hey, keep an open mind, because group energy does a lot. I can tell, if there's someone who's someone's spreading negative energy on the tour, if they show up with their arms crossed and they're going to be like, that'll kill paranormal activity.
Mm-hmm.
We just ask people, say, hey, keep an open mind, enjoy the stories, have some fun. You might be pleasantly surprised. And a lot of times they are.
That's awesome. Pinky, why do you think I had good stuff happen after KGH and Joss's live stream? Was it because I was apologizing at the time? I
don't know. It's probably because you deserve good stuff.
Yeah, probably.
Who knows? Maybe something you had done in life. I think there can be a lot of reasons. I think we're all deserving of good stuff happening. And a lot of people see Robert. I get a lot of questions. People are like, hey, can good stuff happen after seeing Robert? I'll say, yeah, absolutely. Because there's people who talk about seeing him and they're respectful and they exchange pleasantries and then they say, whoa, my business just took off. Whoa, I just had a windfall of money. And a lot of them attribute it to Robert. So
yeah, absolutely.
So I don't think it's only bad things that happen with paranormal. That's one of those. It's one of those things that comes with paranormal entertainment. Looking towards
it's always the dark side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the dark side.
Absolutely.
But I think you don't have the darkness without light. So there should be just as much good coming out of the paranormal as what people associate as dark.
Absolutely.
Great questions.
Sage is asking, do you think that most of the spirits there are good or kind?
I think it's mixed. I really think it's mixed. I think some of them are indifferent. I think a lot of them are just there for energy. And, because it's become a hot spot for energy, people know that I think the spirits know there's people up there with energy looking for those types of things, and they'll fill in those voids. Mm-hmm. And when you're hungry, it's not so much about good or bad. It's about survival. So I think for the spirits, a lot of them are like that. I think for the most part, the ones who are humans, I think, are good. So,
yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. So, David, where can everybody find you?
So, for me, at David L. Sloan on Instagram and a little bit on TikTok and on Facebook, I'm at Florida Keys. But then, really, if they go to hauntedkeywest.com, that's where they'll find out everything about everything haunted in Key West, and from there they can find my tours. Or they can find me. Not too difficult to find.
It's incredible. That's incredible. So, Laura, we're going to wrap things up. Do you have any questions?
No, I think we pretty much covered a lot of everything everybody wanted to know. And
I
appreciate David's time. And I think everybody, pretty much covered everything.
That is incredible. Well, actually, we're going to end the show. David's going to wrap it up actually with us. So everybody, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
We appreciate all your support and joining. Be sure to check out David on his social media, as well as, with Laura, Rawside Paranormal, and with myself. Actually, the QR code up on the corner right there has the links to all, my social media. So until then, everybody, stay safe and stay spooky, and we'll see you later.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.